Good morning, everyone. Those of you that are here, present, welcome, and everyone's getting seated right now, so I'll give you 30 seconds. So, good morning and welcome again, everyone. Those of you that are here and those of you that are participating via webinar. This is our Metropolitan Area Planning Forum, a multi-state rate working group meeting. It's our first meeting, and we'll be hearing more about the map forum later in the program. Today, well, let me say a little bit more about the multi-state group. The multi-state rate working group is a working group of the map forum, and we'll be getting more into the map forum later in the program. But today we have, I believe, 7 of the 9 map forum member MPOs and DOTs at the meeting. I think there's a couple here today present and a few participating on the phone. So I'd like to ask the representatives of those members who are in the room to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Strauss-Leader. I'm the Director of Rate Planning with the New Jersey-Connecticut-Pennsylvania Planning Authority.
Good morning. My name is Mark Nielsen. I'm with the Noticoke Valley Council of Governments. We represent the NPO that's around Waterbury, the city of Waterbury in Connecticut. We're also part members with the Bridgeport Valley NPO as well.
Thank you. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jose Rivera, Executive Director for NYMTC. And on the line, who do we have?
Are you unmuted? Stay unmuted? The lines. Okay. We're getting it. I know. They need to speak. Just to get something. Sorry.
Paul B.
That's okay. We have some technical issues that we need to address. Okay, so I think everyone's unmuted. So on the line, if you can please introduce yourself.
This is Megan Sloan at the Connecticut Metropolitan Council of Governments.
Eloise Powell from Federal Highway Administration, Connecticut Division.
Arthur O'Connor, Federal Highway, New York Division.
Lisa Broughton from New Jersey Department of Transportation. Sorry. Lisa Broughton from Suffolk County Economic Development and Planning.
Chris Clark from SUNY Maritime. Stephen Belfi, New York State Department of Transportation.
Bob Brickman, the National Association of Regional Councils.
Windsor Francis from CDM Smith, Hartford, Connecticut Division.
Kristen Hadjistilianos, Western Connecticut Council of Governments.
David Schmetterer and James Bonanno from Monmouth County Planning.
Dan Coots and PJ Gohil from New York State DOT, Region 8 in Poughkeepsie.
Paul B., PhD Public Affairs.
David Rosenberg, New York State DOT.
Okay, well, welcome again, everyone. We're going to get into the program. I'll have Jerry Bogas, our planning director from NYMTC, and and Charles Weeder of NJTPA will talk a little bit about NAPO.
Good morning again. So, what I have up on the screen, stereo up. We have up on the screen is the Teddy Roosevelt, the 14,400 TEU vessel that transversed under the Bayonne Bridge in September of this year. The fact that a vessel like this is calling in this region, that's not a New Jersey victory. This is a regional victory. It's also a series of implications that extend throughout the multi-regional area that we all represent. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about what the MAP Forum is, as well as give you a quick background on some of the most recent trends going on in freight transportation, having spent about the last 3 weeks in a lot of external meetings in the private sector. So about the MAP Forum, and I'm with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. We are the 13 counties in northern and central New Jersey. We have several members on the phone. But this is a voluntary agreement, but a necessary agreement among the MPOs that we all work together. We share economic linkages. We share a number of trends and conditions. And certainly today we're talking about freight. And freight doesn't know boundaries. It knows customers, it knows suppliers, it knows modes. And everything going on in that industry requires that we think collectively across our regions. So in terms of the federal requirements, again, this is all of the, I'll say the legal lingo that you would get, but it tells you exactly what the agreement entails. It does meet certain requirements, and it is in line with provisions of the FAST Act. And importantly, it talks about coordination. It adds through the agreement that we all work together, that we consider the products of each other as we go our own work. And indeed, I think we've seen this with the development of the freight plan. Certainly with the New Jersey freight plan, NYMTC was there, Lehigh Valley was involved, others are the 3 MPOs in New Jersey. And this is something, by the way, when I've been in Washington, that comes up all the time. The federal government is getting 50 freight state plans. They're getting them in as of about 3 weeks ago. They had accepted 6. They have 8, but at this point they must have most of them in. By December 4th, FHWA must approve all the freight plans if the states want to continue to receive freight-related funds through the FAST Act. But it's an interesting set of documents because it can tell the story of whether individual states have individual priorities or whether that patchwork of information actually provides a uniform float around the country and what that all means. So all of us working together is not just something good for us, but something at a national level everyone is looking at these days. So as Jose mentioned, we have an expanded membership now, and we welcome the union members to that. I don't know if Lehigh Valley's on the phone, but certainly they are, they're certainly a sister agency to us, and one that has a great deal of activity going on, as do the other areas there. So again, the additional signatories to it. So a little bit about New Jersey, and I mentioned New Jersey because as a state, we have over 1 billion square feet of warehousing space. If I was just to talk about the state, it'd be 3rd in the country, behind the entire massive area around Chicago and the entirety of Southern California. Now, Jones Lang LaSalle, I can't take credit for it, called our respective area, which includes about every MPO in this room, the New Jersey region in terms of industrial space, which is the #1 in North America. So again, New Jersey alone, 1 billion square feet. In the NJTPA region, now this is at as of the third quarter of this year, 814 million square feet, 8 million under construction, more than a dozen buildings that were added, that became online and occupied this quarter alone, and requirements by companies for 17 million square feet. That's just in New Jersey. The largest port on the East Coast, 6.3 million containers in 2016. As you've probably heard, the port is actually having the best year ever in 2017. August was, again, the best month ever in terms of container growth. 663,000 cars through the port. The bulk is up, freight bulk is up, just about everything is up in this region. And by the way, coming in on larger vessels, so perhaps larger amounts of cargo, but coming in fewer vessels. Our entire area, whether we're talking New Jersey or all of our regions, has a very robust roadway network and a rail network. But one thing we have in common throughout our area is that most of this infrastructure was developed over the last couple of centuries. So we're all in a situation of trying to adapt 19th century infrastructure to 21st century needs. I do note there, Newark Liberty International, cargo has grown there, but it dropped to 11th in the country. It's still in one of the top ranked internationally, but Kennedy, what's happening in Stewart, what's happening in Lehigh Valley, what's happening in Philadelphia. Again, we're seeing some renaissance in air cargo movement. So some additional statistics, because some press reporters are now calling New Jersey the warehouse state. Since 1998, our region alone has added over 100 million square feet of space. Since the Great Recession of 2008, over 20 million square feet of space. It's not just a New Jersey phenomenon. The red-hot industrial market is throughout our area because we're here. It's a consumer market. And so there is demand for space in New York City, in Long Island, in Connecticut, in Lehigh Valley is having the same kind of zero availability rate as New Jersey. Southern New Jersey is a new hotspot for the activity. Connecticut, we're all seeing increased demand for industrial properties, not just for retail, but for all sorts of industrial activity. So I did want to note it isn't just e-commerce. Food production in particular has been growing in our area, and I listed some of the companies that are recent to give you an idea of the types of food. It's not just farms, and that's southern New Jersey and other parts of our area and into Pennsylvania, but bakeries, Wenner, you go to Wegmans, or you go to Boston Market, that's where your bread came from, it's par-baked there. Fratelli Beretta, we jokingly call that the prosciutto line, but just about any kind of sausage product that you're getting in any kind of supermarket came out of that branded facility in Morris County. Bakeries, and then if you decide to get all the goods and cook at home, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, Blue Apron, 2,000 plus new workers in Linden, New Jersey, HelloFresh in Newark. And then we have a whole new class of hydroponic type farming in older industrial space such as aerofarms. And that's happening again throughout our map area. I do want to mention about the port industry, and there are the statistics, and again, growing like crazy. The Bayonne Bridge project was completed ahead of schedule, became operational in terms of the new air draft at the end of June, and immediately the new vessels started calling, starting with 12,000 TEUs, going to 13, and then the 14-4 vessel. You see here, sisters of her will be coming in on a regular basis. By the way, the line that owns this particular vessel, the Teddy Roosevelt, placed an order recently for half a dozen 20,000 TEU vessels. Are they necessarily going to call here? Maybe not, but that growth in vessel types trickles down, and so we see the larger ones coming here. And it has all sorts of ramifications. Last week, we released the latest in the economic impact studies of the port. Anyone wants a copy? We did bring one hard copy for a gift to NYMTC, but just give me your business card. We'll be glad to send it. The biggest news there is that in just 2 years, we've added over 60,000 jobs. That isn't entirely, shall we say, or mostly down at the terminals. Most of that has taken place in that distribution space, that industrial space that receives or ships product through the port. There have been vast changes that have occurred, not just a red-hot market, but a market that includes a lot more e-commerce than is in the past, and a lot more people working in these buildings, and a lot more cargo coming directly to those buildings through the port in this region. So, in 2016, for our 2045 plan, I did add supply chain professionals, what keeps them up at night. Had the opportunity in a couple of different forums to ask the same thing this year to a different group of very senior supply chain executives. Well, one thing is for sure, keeping up with us, the consumers, who like to point and click and order things, certainly is keeping them up at night. Because it's not just two-day service, it's not just next-day service, it's not just same-day service. Have Amazon Now, which is in an hour. We won't even talk about Amazon Key. But this need for speed goes way beyond retail. The best way to summarize, and I hope this is a phrase you'll take back with you, is that just in time just isn't fast enough. Whether you're in the chemical industry, whether you're in any type of commodity movement, the need for speed and accurate delivery has never been more pressurized than it is today. So that puts a compelling need on all of us here, because that requires predictable, efficient travel times across every single mode. Then we've had a series of natural disasters of the last several years. 2017 has been probably the worst on record, whether we're talking hurricanes, the storm that just went through Germany, Poland, and other countries in Europe, earthquakes in Mexico, fires on the West Coast. You name it, it's been happening. Whether it started with Fukushima and a single plant that made the single ingredient for metallic paint for autos, to just everything that's happening now. Everyone's trying to think through yet again, how do I maintain operations? How do I keep my supply chains sustained through these disruptive events? And then, not a surprise, because we've heard this all before, workforce needs. There are critical workforce deficits across every single aspect of the supply chain, and they're growing. And it's something that's now affecting decisions on where to locate operations and how to keep workforce. I heard about one industrial development on Monday where they say their bathrooms equal the finest hotels, because that's where their workers spend the most time, and they really want to retain the workers. So they put in, 4-star restrooms in their warehouse as an amenity to keep the workforce. This is what it's getting to right now. So again, I'm not going to go through this. A lot of you have heard me talk about this before, but I want you to think through how you buy things and how that's completely reshaped demand, our expectations, the kind of facilities, the land uses, the deliveries. And I've talked quite a bit about the changing last mile. I'm not going to go through it again. It keeps changing even from when I did this line. Just take into account that origins, destinations, players, and time frames have utterly changed. So that's the last mile, but I also want you to focus on the mid-mile. So how many people here have sat home for 3 hours waiting for furniture delivery? Anyone ever get a call at the end of 3 hours? Truck's not going to make it today. Really annoying. Probably not going to buy from them again, right? That's a concern, because in retail, the customer is king or queen. So what's happening a lot in mid-mile is that that's your 2 million square foot facilities. And then to ensure that if you're in Long Island or somewhere in New York or Connecticut or New Jersey, that you get that piece of furniture when you ordered it from Pottery Barn in that 3-hour time frame, they have now moved that shipment to a local point, a 10 to 50,000 square foot building near you, that the truck can get to you within a time frame. So now we have mid-mile and last mile. Now this is something we saw in warehouses and distribution centers decades ago, but it's back. And it's because we now have Amazon Now and 1-hour delivery. So buildings have changed. I just go back to this again. Typical building, truck, lots of truck storage, a more modern facility, cross-dock operations over there. But what do people notice about this Amazon facility? What's the difference there? What do you see there that you didn't see in the other building? Yeah. Looks like a mall, right? Looks like an office complex. Because the fulfillment center has 3 times the number of employees, typically the distribution center. 0.3 employees per 1,000 square feet in the distribution center, 1 employee per 1,000 square feet in the fulfillment center. We're down in the peak period. It's 3 employees per 1,000 square feet. That's office building concentration. So again, I want to bring that up because that goes beyond just talking about freight. That talks about how workers get from where they live to where they work, and that's how they decide jobs as well. And actually, this is a picture of the Z-Line that's run by the Greater Mercer TMA, which connects that Amazon facility in Bordentown in Mercer County with a transit hub so that workers can move easily at the end and beginning of shifts. Because not everybody can have a car, nor do we want that kind of traffic. But I just want you to think about this, and this is what people are looking for these days, and this is what the new buildings look like. Interior functions, you go in it, and part of this is the need for speed and efficiency, and also part of it has to do with a lack of available labor. So a lot of functions on those orange pieces, running the racks around, those are Kiva robots, now owned by Amazon, because there's an analysis that most of the workers spend their time walking up and down aisles to pick things, so now they bring the racks to the worker, increase the amount of time. Tremendous amount of efficiency. The young man with a box, he's using voice to pick, which frees up his hands. If you go online, and this is down in Burlington County in DVRPC's region, if you Google and YouTube Destination Maternity and Nevada, this is one of the most state-of-the-art operations in the U.S. Items get touched twice, and they handle actually all types of apparel and maternity items that they've extended out. This building is located actually on the light rail system. They did get some incentives for that, but their workers wanted it as well. And they do make use of the light rail, and they can walk over to the distribution spot. And if you look at the YouTube video, which will tell you a lot more, you'll see the degree of automation in the racks and everything else. And by the way, their ROI was 18 months because they were able to cut their workforce by 40%. But I bring this up not only to give you an idea of the rapid pace of technology, but also because what you see in these buildings, you will see in the rest of the freight system within 10 years, maybe 5 years at this point. So look at the degree of automation. Again, I urge you to go to YouTube, Destination Maternity in Nevada, and you can walk through the entire building online. Other emerging technologies, and we'll talk about them a bit, again, that we're all going to be considering, think of them as disruptors, because they disrupt what we thought about. They certainly make our past analysis of data obsolete because we have a completely changed situation. 3D printing coming online fast. Blockchain, which is a new, you think of it as Bitcoin, but a lot more secure. A new way of accounting to expedite the movement of and accounting of items that go through in supply chains. We hope to have a presentation on blockchain at our Freight Initiatives Committee meeting at NJTPA on December 11th. Details to follow from IBM Watson supply chain. We're also going to have a presentation on drones. Drones are here. They're not necessarily Amazon drones, and they're certainly not delivering things right to your door. But they are being used for monitoring. The drone picture here is being used for delivery of critical medical supplies in disrupted areas. I do mention drones. The first drone delivery was of beer to some ice fishermen. The first fully automated truck was the auto truck pictured below it, delivering Budweiser in Coors Country. So I will posit off the record that fear may be a leading indicator of technological change, are certainly on the mind of a lot of supply chain tech people. That being said, again, we're looking at truck platooning and a wide range of technologies that are coming out, and so is everyone else in supply chain. So very quickly, and to wrap this up, because we are doing so much here, I did mention our Freight Initiative Committee meeting. Our discussion in October was on the red hot industrial market. We're talking about technologies in December. They are every other month. If you want to be on the mailing list, just give me your business card. We spend a lot of time out in the field, and something I highly recommend because things are changing so quickly. We go out with our counties. We meet with them. We talk to them. We ask them about what are your freight questions, your concerns, your ideas. What do you need to know? Then we collectively go to a freight operation. The idea is to learn and build connective tissue. We have one coming up where some of our board members are going to be looking at operations and support. They've asked about that. But we've gone to a variety of facilities, and it's always been fascinating. We recently completed an inventory of waterborne resources, recognizing that short sea shipping and in use of our water resources, not just in New Jersey, but in New York and elsewhere, will probably be going in the future, both passenger and freight. We have our rail freight industrial opportunity FRIO corridors program. FRIO runs with BRIO. Anyone has kids, and BRIO train sits. So you'll remember FRIO. We've developed an inventory of industrial opportunity locations along those rail lines that have physical restrictions to national standard rail freight access, and we are just getting our consultant team out in the field to inventory all of the physical impediments and begin to figure out what we need to do to bring rail service to all of our freight areas. And once we know what to do, we have something called our Freight Concept Development Program underway, designed to get projects from the end of study results to shovel-ready status. And then again, going back to why we're here in a MAP forum and working together, we are a member of the Council on Port Performance. We were part of the group that NJTPA put together to do the freight plan. We all work together. So I will end just in noting two things. One, all of our data, if you go to our website, we throw it to our Freight Activity Locator School. And finally, the takeaway here, look at what's influencing freight. Look at those disruptors. They're going to keep changing how we do things. We've got to get ahead of them. We've got a lot of new people that we have to engage. And we have to consider this in terms of what we have to do from a challenge perspective as well as the opportunities. We've got a lot of opportunities. That Teddy Roosevelt vessel coming in, that's a mega opportunity for this region. And go out in the field all the time. So with that, I think I'm turning it over to Jerry at this point, unless there are any questions. Jerry, you want me to take questions now?
We'll take questions. So again, we're running a little bit short, but we'll be taking questions at some point. Before passing it on to Jerry, and thank you very much, Anne. That was a very fascinating presentation. I just wanted to say that I was part of this mega regional workshop that the Federal Highway Administration convened about 3 months ago in Providence, Rhode Island. And just to echo what Anne was just presenting, the focus of the workshop was basically to focus on freight and how freight impacts economic development in the mega region and in the Northeast mega region. And Anne was also present at the workshop along with a couple of others here. Again, there's a huge impact that freight obviously has in economic development, and also there was from the federal perspective, they advocated for this type of forum. There was a strong consensus that we should be doing this a lot more often. So just wanted to say that. And Jerry will be talking about the charges of the working group.
Right. So for those of you in the room, I'd like to welcome you to the New York City section of the New Jersey region. I think Anne's overview was great because it really talked about the changes that we're all dealing with. And the fact is, although some of it was focused on New Jersey for various reasons, including the characteristics in New Jersey, it's a larger issue, as Jose knows from being at that forum. And it goes even beyond the map forum area, which includes southwestern Connecticut, Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and then down to we're partnering with the South Jersey Transition Planning Organization. So it even goes beyond that. So there's every reason in the world for us to be together at this level. But this is new, and one of the things I'm going to do hopefully quickly is to talk about what the charge to this group should be and get some input. Carlos Pozo, who's our new FRED coordinator here at NYMTC, has a hand mic, so when we get into this in a minute, we'll be going around if you have any input. We'll also, Fidel, ask to open up the webinar for input. So this type of a group, this type of an effort can provide a multi-state perspective. Each of the MPOs that are members of the MAP Forum, including NYMTC and NJTPA, have their own committees or working groups or task forces that are looking at freight, but coming together and expanding that can bring a multi-state perspective to a number of things. You see what's on the slide here, including things like data and analysis, but more importantly, multi-state programs, what we call boundary projects, as well as characteristics of the system, characteristics of commodity flow, and characteristics of vehicle volumes. All these things can be looked at in a broader perspective through a multi-state group like this. Now, in terms of boundary projects and multi-state programs, these are just some examples here that I put together from NYMTC's plan, which was done in coordination with both Southwestern Connecticut and NJTPA and Lehigh Valley. So some of these things also appear in NJTPA's plan and other places. The boundary projects, we have a general definition of them being projects that have impacts in more than one MPO planning area. Sometimes they're literally physically on the boundary between MPO areas, but they need not be as long as their impacts are far-reaching. Some of them are freight supportive. They're roadway projects that obviously have impacts on goods movement. Others are freight specific. You can see some examples here on the left. On the right are some multi-state programs that can be undertaken and are really optimal at a multi-state level. Chief among them, the Clean Freight Corridors program, which is proposed in NYMTC's plan and supported by the other MPOs, would be optimal if taken to the mega-regional level. Existing within one of our MPO planning areas simply wouldn't be enough. So working together on some of these programs and some of the things you talked about are in this list too, working together on some of these programs makes a lot of sense. So these are just some examples of what this group could focus on as far as boundary projects and multi-state programs. The question for the group is, what is the optimal charge to the group? Is the multi-state perspective, how is that best to be utilized? And beyond that, does this group supplement or supersede the other groups? My own sense is that it supplements the work that's done through the Innovations Committee at NJTPA and the Freight Transportation Working Group here at NYMTC. But in some cases, it may even supersede some of that work. So we have to evolve that over time. And you know, what other activities might this group consider? So we don't have time to have a huge discussion about this, but if there are any thoughts first in the room about any of these issues related to this particular group and the fact that it is a multi-state group, Carlos will run around with the microphone, I hope, and get that information. So any thoughts in the room first? Peter Cohen in the back. Carlos is going to get his work out here. Hi, Peter.
Hi, thank you. It seems to me that one key element that hasn't been discussed yet, and should be pretty much the top, is the concern of sustainability and how freight transportation changes will contribute to that. It could very well be the ultimate disruptor, because sometimes it may be shown that to make certain significant contributions in that area, what people would like to do, what they think their customers want, might be at odds. And what is the priority? You may be able to afford something, you may be able to bring it about, but should you? And we should be aware of that as a factor right up front, not as an afterthought. Not that I'm saying that this budding organization has that right now because it's just growing. So I just wanted to put that in as a major concern that I have.
Let me ask you a follow-up on that. Excellent point. Do you mean sustainability within the freight industry itself, or sustainability of the freight industry in the whole picture?
Well, I guess you could say the whole picture because different segments make different contributions. As we're making progress in the generation, let's say, at large 50,000 feet with electric generation, transportation, including freight transportation, is going to be an area that will be more of a continuing problem. And it might even come to the point where someone says, should air freight be encouraged when you consider what it does? With faster truck service be better than that? So that's all part of the matrix discussion.
Very good. Thank you, Peter. Joe, right again over here?
Here goes. Congestion pricing. What's going to happen with congestion pricing? It's going to change all the truck patterns through New York City. And the next thing, what happened yesterday? They start checking all the trucks going through Manhattan. That's basically my question. What about congestion pricing, and how is that going to affect traffic? You've got the outlet mall on Staten Island, you got the Ferris wheel on Staten Island, you got a 400-store outlet mall in the middle of New Jersey coming. That's all going to affect your truck traffic.
Excellent points. Thank you, Joe. Carlos, right over here. So the folks on the phone will get to you in just a minute. Let's just do the room first.
Dan Peterson, Dewberry. Can we talk about resiliency? We are now at this 2 or 3 days of work for the 5th anniversary of Sandy, and we had a heck of a storm on that anniversary itself. But everything that we do in freight is almost all within wetland tidal area, lowlands, flatlands, right off the shore. And to the extent that all that is vulnerable, how we are going to upland it, we certainly are not going to be able to hold back the ocean.
It's not in the plan at this point. Very good point. Thank you. Anyone else in the room at this point? Okay. Yes, right back here. Carlos, you're going to have to sprint, I think. So we need to get Carlos a segue or something.
Thank you. Rosanna Collins, Sierra. I've heard from a significant amount of our industry clients that coming off of the resilience conversation, not just from an environmental shock and stresses point of view, but how well the metro region is actually making adjustments to support freight rail coming in to areas such as the Bronx. There is concern that maybe the infrastructure itself is not sufficient as it stands to continue growing that industry or allowing it to further support businesses. So not just, again, from an environmental point of view, but what does the future long-term resilience or freight network look like from an industry point of view and business continuity point of view? Where there are pinch points in the network and insufficient infrastructure that would be slowing down potential growth of business.
That's an excellent point. And the slide earlier, I think we did point out that gaps in the system need to be looked at from a mega-regional perspective. So that is very important, particularly in the rail system. Okay, thanks. So Fidel, I'm sorry, Sandra over here. Fidel, if you could open up the webinar also at the same time.
One more thing that I know has been discussed a lot in this group over the past several years is advocacy. Is that something that this group should be engaged in more? And that could touch on a lot of the other issues that were brought up today, whether that's engaging our local residents and that their behavior directly impacts the way freight movement is handled. And just talked about Blue Apron. Right? Everyone wants something at their door, but how many more trucks does that put on the road? Or, I want my Amazon package right now, but how many more, how much more waste does that put on not just the trucks delivering the goods, but sanitation trucks taking out the recycling as well. So the general advocacy as well.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. We have one more in the room, and then we'll go to the phone. Right here. Hi.
I'm from Department of State Planning of New York City. So I'm curious about how the data sharing would be in this working group, because I think you have already touched on like data analysis. And I know that each agency may collect different, data, so I'm wondering how that works.
Well, we're curious too. I mean, that would be one thing that we have to pursue. I'm not sure, and again, different MPOs are at different levels, but freight data is particularly difficult. And coordinate how that would happen just in the collection of the data and the sharing of the data as well as how to use it could be a formal thrust of this group. It sounds like you would support that. So I don't really have an answer, but it's certainly something that a group like this could work on. So let me move on to the phone just for the interest of time. Any input from anyone on the phone in terms of the optimal charts of this group?
Jerry, good morning. It's Stephen Levy at Sprague.
Hi,
and good, thank you. And my question is this committee also looking at secondary and tertiary waterways to move freight into New York and to Connecticut, and especially with the big container ships coming in, perhaps get some of these trucks off the road, as there is much interest in developing some of these waterways in New York. So I think perhaps that should be looked at if it's not already. And another piece of that as well is that with all the congestion and the traffic, and there's still much of the tractor trailers that are coming into the city, and one of the detriments has been that the trucks and the tractor trailers don't have a place to possibly park overnight so they can get in for a quick morning delivery. Thank you.
Both excellent points, and I think Ann also pointed out how the last mile is changing, not only in New York City but everywhere. Certainly, truck parking and storage is part of that mix, and as more things go to e-commerce, there are different types of demands for this. So, excellent point, Stephen. I got both of those down. So, anyone else on the phone want to offer anything on this? Okay, great. So, Fidel, close the phone, please, before somebody else says something. And we're going to move on because we are a little bit behind time, but we'll go back to Jose. And thank you for your input. We'll organize this, and we'll talk about, at the end of the meeting, we'll talk about what we're going to be doing in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Hopefully, we can make up time and we can take a few more questions towards the end. But it's interesting that there was a lot of talk about getting trucks off the roadways. So for this meeting, we made the Port of New York and New Jersey the focus of this meeting. The Port of New York and New Jersey has obviously enormous impact on freight throughout the region. So as I said, the focus of this meeting is the development of the master plan for the port. And today, we're lucky to have Mr. Steve Brown of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to provide some context for the master plan and provide us with a presentation on the master plan. So Steve,
Hello, everyone. A lot of familiar faces here, and I'm sure people that we've worked with who are on the phone. Normally about multimodal freight issues. As you know, I'm in the planning department, and today I have the opportunity to introduce a project by our port department on behalf of the Port Authority, and it's to present and discuss our Port Master Plan effort. And I'd like to give you a quick overview about the port before we get into the plan itself. So I think most people know, but some people may not know, so let me quickly say that the Port Authority's facilities include 6 major container terminals. So in every major ocean carrier, 70% are first port of call. The port also accommodates 13 auto carriers and more than 100 bulk vessels regularly. The port handled nearly $200 billion worth of cargo last year and enjoys direct access to over 125 million consumers. In fact, the port has the greatest port reach on the East Coast. The port's local market share is home to 27 million consumers who live within a 2-hour drive, and that includes consumers from each of the participants in the MAP forum today. Use this slide. As Ann had mentioned, she just worked with New York Shipping Association on the economic benefits of the port to the region, and 400,000 jobs in total are supported by the port, and that's nearly $26 billion in personal income for residents and $65 billion for its businesses. Across the port facilities, the Port Authority and its partners continue to make significant investments to efficiently move growing volumes of freight coming through the port. This photo, as Ann had mentioned, celebrates the completion of the $1.6 billion navigational clearance program, which raised the roadway of the Bayonne Bridge and allowed the large ships, such as the Theodore Roosevelt, to get through. Looking forward, the Port Authority has over $1 billion of planned investments for the port in its 10-year capital plan. It includes Port Wharf and berth replacement program and the installation of support tracks for a new express rail. So today, I'd like to share the Port Authority would like to share our work and invite you to provide us with your thinking as we plan beyond the next decade. The Port Department's embarked upon its master plan. It's aimed to lead us to a strong future as we look forward 30 years down the road. To present an overview of the plan and its goals and the work to date, I'd like to introduce our consultant team lead from Hatch, named Yorka.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Some familiar faces out there, which is good news. To the theme of collaboration, we've been doing a lot of outreach as part of this master plan for the Port Authority, and so it's kind of good for us to start to see faces that we've talked to through the year, but it's also great to see faces that we haven't, because I think it's really important that the outreach for the master plan that we're doing gets to as many people as possible, because I think the themes that we've heard so far are so important to the region, to the success of the region, moving freight, and then just as a byproduct to the success of the master plan, because as Jose said, we want to get trucks off the road and congestion solved and movement of goods streamlined. Unfortunately, the problem with the master plan is we've projected cargo and looked at it, and it's just getting more and more coming to this region. So we have to work out how that cargo doesn't end up on the road, and so that's part of the challenge of the master plan, and that's part of what this is a great initiative, and we as the consultant team and the Port Authority are really trying to be as collaborative as possible with this, because we really do recognize that this, whilst the plan is a plan for the Port Authority facilities, it really is reliant on everyone. So just a really small recap of this in terms of sort of setting the scene and sort of battery limits and parameters of the master plan for the Port Authority. For those on the phone, for those outer regions, just in a real bit of context, the blue images on the screen are the Port Authority's port facilities, 6 maritime facilities in New York and New Jersey. On the left of the screen is sort of the Newark, Elizabeth, and then Howland Hook, New York facilities. In the center is the Port Jersey Bayonne, and on the right is Red Hook and some Southbrook and rail properties. Those are the properties that the Port Authority controls, and those are the properties that are the context of a 30-year master plan that we're engaged in. Really important throughout this process of planning and outreach that we've done is been brought home to us to recognize that we are 8 properties of 220 on the harbour. We're just a small piece of the ecosystem that uses the waterway, but a major contributor. So the plan is for those properties, but being really conscious of the impact that these 6 properties have on the region. We use the term inside the gate and outside the gate. The master plan is looking at the use of the facilities inside the gate, but really looking to leverage and work with all the stakeholders outside the gate, as I said. The cargo that's arriving is going into the blue, but how it distributes is really key, and really key for this group in the room. So in terms of the master plan, we worked with the Port Authority at the start of the project to really hone in on a vision and an objective for the plan, established a vision statement, which is to create a flexible roadmap for a competitive, financially successful port, but maximising those regional jobs, economic impacts, and really looking to minimise environmental impacts and effects. This has been sort of the guiding principle for the team throughout the project. Remembering that flexibility is key. Anne's already touched on disruptors. Disruptors are a major thing in the port industry as well, and setting the port on a 30-year plan is easy to do today, but knowing disruptors are coming rapidly is where the challenge is. So providing and enabling flexibility in the plan is really going to be key. Just a brief overview, the output of the master plan is a roadmap. It's sort of a 30-year vision of where the port is looking to go to over a 30-year time frame to sort of realign itself, looking at the challenges and opportunities that it faces over the next 30 years. As part of that is sort of action plans on a short, medium-term and long-term basis. Now, these action plans, we recognise that the master plan is only successful if that short-term 1 to 10-year action plan is implementable. So it's setting a vision, but now going through that process of how do we create some stepping stones that successfully set the port up, embody the plan with the rest of the stakeholder community, and really solve some of that issue so that it's seen as success and is collectively gathered by everyone and taken forward. So the action plan is extremely important. For half the people in the room that have seen a number of the stakeholders, these slides were used 2 weeks before, so some of them will refresh, so apologies for that. Just in terms of the process, sort of 4 concurrent stages. We're now in approximately the 3rd phase of the process. With a master plan like this, which is 16 months duration, we're probably 2/3 of the way in. There's always a tendency for people to want to get to the end and want to get to the solution. We're not there yet, so there's no spoiler alert at the moment, but we are now in the process of working with the Port Authority on some real options. We're now testing them with some of the key stakeholder groups to sort of help us guide what that final plan and options should look like. Very briefly, the 4 phases was the onboarding, the data gathering, the vision setting process that we did with the Port Authority and key stakeholders, and then a period of really deep dive analysis, which I'll go into a little bit of that really generated drivers, opportunities and constraints for us to guide us on sort of optioneering and developing options for how those properties could and should be used over a 30-year time period. And then the final phase is obviously starting to define much more deliberate plan and work with the Port Authority to walk that now back to the stakeholder group and refine it and make sure there's alignment to the extent possible. Conclusion, or the first draft of the Port Authority is in the end of February of next year, and then there's a period of that being walked through, reviewed by the Port Authority and brought to key stakeholders. Just in terms of activities to date, I've mentioned the stakeholder outreach a number of times. I have a few slides on it. It is really important, and I do want to dwell on it a little bit. The foundational analysis pieces was broken into 3 sections: land use, capacity analysis, and market assessment. Reasonably common processes. Market analysis was the full breadth of maritime commodities and alternate uses, and then looking at the capacity of the current footprints, acreage was required to accommodate the market forecasts. But it really did a deep dive along the lines of some of Anne's themes of looking at disruptors, looking at technology changes that might be out there and helping us inform us on potential changes in volume. One example that we like to use because it's most tangible is the effect of 3D printing. There's a continual talk of containerization and containers just continuing to grow and grow and grow in terms of volume. But if that changes to a 3D printing market and more goods are printed and developed and manufactured locally here, does that mean more bulk cargo needs to come into the region to supply that printing industry? So not necessarily something the Port Authority would set a plan for tomorrow, but in the plan we are looking to articulate flexibility and the ability to make that decision when that trend starts to materialize, if it starts to materialize. So we looked at themes along that line, sort of other industry themes. We looked at big vessels, as Anne has pointed out, that the industry of shipping is changing. It's now the big vessels and the alliances, the owners of the vessels have formed themselves into alliances. They always have, but now it's down to sort of 3 key alliances. So you're now dealing with 3 major essentially shipping groups that control the waterways and control the size of the vessels. So in that regard, they really are dictating size of ships that are coming into the harbour. Other items that we looked at through analysis was climate change, sustainability, and resiliency, and I have a couple of slides to talk to that. Out of that, we've developed drivers and now working through options with the Port Authority. Just in terms of the stakeholder engagement process, each quarter it's sort of been quite detailed. We started with sort of key one-on-ones in terms of the terminal operators, the users, the direct users, and then through the second quarter of this year, we really branched out into having breakout sessions and white round tables with agencies, community groups, elected officials for all of the port facilities, and really have tried to cast as wide a net as possible. Through Q3, that process has continued, and now that we're starting to sort of certainly galvanize on some challenges and opportunities is to feed that back to stakeholder groups. And 2 weeks ago, we had a great session with a number of the people in the room here, the MPOs and DOTs, where we convened with the Port Authority planning session to sort of look at a number of issues that we've identified as being just issues that need to be solved, agnostic of some of the final plan solutions. And that was really great. It was a chance to work with outside the gate stakeholders that are critical to solve these issues, inland port issues, road and rail congestion issues, environmental sustainability, resiliency issues as it relates to climate change, sort of interfacing plans of the Port Authority with the joining plans. And those sessions are going to continue to roll out through Q4 and then into 2018, just recognizing that the success of this plan is ensuring that outside the gate stakeholders are thoroughly involved and bought into the plan. Some of the key themes we've heard, now these themes are generally from the communities and elected officials of the communities, but I think that the general themes that are heard most of the stakeholder outreach. Environment and climate change is just a big issue. How are we dealing with that? How's the port thinking of that? And interfacing with the other plans. And to my point of the session 2 weeks ago, we were really looking to tackle that together. Health issues, I've heard a lot constantly, congestion, emissions from vessels, how's the plan going to tackle that? So that was key, that's a key thought for us. Certainly in terms of the plan, it would be looking to make sure we provide sufficient layouts and infrastructure for the Port Authority to start to move to more cleaner technologies, electric vehicles, provision for that. Waterfront accessibility is a major issue, technology, not just the very keen interest on the impact of technology on the industry, the changing of jobs, as well as, of course, the impact on the number of jobs. So that's a key thing. Employment and the economic benefit of the port, working waterfront and retaining that, and regional collaboration. It's a key theme of today, but you hear it at every stakeholder group you go to, including the community. They're all very keen in hearing that we're working with the rest of the agencies and working together for the same cause. Just some of the drivers, some of the key themes that we've come out with. And as I say, unfortunately, we're in the middle of the planning process, so I don't have any solutions here, but just wanted to give an update. I mentioned this is sort of a very crude volume forecast that doesn't really give away too much, but it's basically over a 30-year period. On the left is 6 million. Sorry, the information is volumes of containers in TEU on the left-hand axis. Dates across the bottom over a 30-year period, and basically, as we've heard, 6 million TEU in 2016, and then projecting that over a 30-year period, depending on various pessimistic and optimistic scenarios to do with export forecasts. On the low side, we're sort of saying we could see that doubling over a 30-year period, so sort of a 12 million TEU market, depending on how aggressive and competitive the Port Authority is with the investments it's made in intermodal and penetrations into markets in the Midwest. What could that come on a most optimistic basis? And that could be up to 3 times the volume of boxes moving through today. So to Jose's point, that's a big challenge, and that's something that we as a group have to address and look at how that can be accommodated. Just another pure fact out of the analysis, and again, this is a slide that's been seen many times. It's just looking at literally the capacity that's in the harbour at the moment. So it's just distribution geographically. And again, this is all available on the internet, so there's no confidentiality here, but of the 100% of capacity in the harbour, a significant amount of it, 75 to 80% is Elizabeth and Newark, 10% in New York, but that equates to about 90% through Kilburn Cull, which is quite a lot, particularly when you talk about volumes doubling and tripling. So as a thought piece for the Port Authority and as we plan, just thinking about continuing to grow at that same distribution, or is there other distributions we should be considering as we think of things like resiliency and redundancy of system and growing into the future. One of the takeaways that was presented to us the stakeholder group last 2 weeks ago by the transportation agencies is just being very mindful of the distribution profile that is adopted, because that signals to the distribution centres where they should develop and grow. So that is a very perfect point and taken on board by the consultant team in the Port Authority. You've probably seen this vessel a lot in the last month, the Teddy Roosevelt. It was a great day. A lot of people took time out to go and watch it. It was 14,000. We, for those that were there, literally stopped the harbour. And I don't think that was just because it came through. It is literally a big event for a large vessel to move through the Kilburn Cull. It's a one-way procession, no other vessels in the water, and you start to have to ask yourself, how sustainable is that if that's the vessel that most cargoes are riding into the future? In terms of our fleet forecasting in the future, we had been predicting 18,000, sort of the larger upsize that might come into the harbour, just in terms of cascading vessels. 22,000 vessels are on other global trade routes that may not get to here in 30 years. However, there was a McKinsey article that was circulated this week who've done some future forecasting on containers, and they're saying in 50 years it's maybe 50,000 TEU vessels. So that's a yeah. Do I have a question?
Technical here.
So I'm happy to keep going, Jerry, just in the sake of time. I can hold my slides up. So that's just another thought piece. Is the vessels are getting larger, and how sustainable and the management of the Kilburn Cull in terms of handling those vessels. So a constant driver for this study and a key thing. Major driver that's a topic of today is the landside transportation issues, constraints. We've looked at rail capacity, road capacity, and really finding, with no surprise, that great regional networks and can accommodate the sort of the volumes that we talked about, but the criticality is getting it onto those networks and getting it away. And so that's going to be a key driver, working with the stakeholders to work out these projects, that once it leaves the gates of the terminals, how does it get onto that network? Obviously, looking at the infrastructure requirements for that, the cost, and that's a factor. And finally, in the short term, and Jose, should we just keep going? I think we have to for the sake of time, right?
Part of the answer, difficulties.
Yeah, so a key thing in the short term is chassis management and empty management. And if you drive down there today, we've done, I should have said under our capacity analysis, that generally the terminals have capacity for the next number of years, but it's really at the roadside, the congestion in the port streets that need to be addressed. So part of this plan at the short-term basis, just to be effective, is to help sort that out, help sort how chassis management happens, how empty management happens, and try to make that as a sort of a stepping stone of success for the plan. To the point of data and data collection, we've done some origin destination analysis, which was based on buying vendor data of trucks. It was useful information, but wouldn't it be great if that was just a constant, dynamic, real-time capture of data of every truck or chassis that's moved around in the region that's shared, and that smart people could get that data and learn from it and progressively improve the system. So, as a collaborative theme, we'll certainly be putting in the master plan as a recommendation that to me is just something that needs to happen. I did have some slides on landside transportation, but again, it really doesn't show distribution other than you've seen before. We're in the process of vetting that with the Port Authority. But needless to say that the origin destination trucking movements is a big issue and a big consideration for the plan, and we're looking at the location of capacity of the terminals and the impact on current road congestion, current origin destination, see if we can change that in some way to optimize underutilized roads, take advantage of that. Inland ports is a thing that we're looking at in terms of ways of addressing that in the future. I have two other slides that I'll just touch on very briefly in terms of drivers. Financial performance in our vision statements. It is a piece, the port needs to be mindful, as I mentioned, about sustainability. Part of sustainability is doing things in a sustainable manner and not just continuing to invest and do maintenance on areas of the facility that aren't necessarily critical to the operation. So being mindful of how that whole financial piece works is a key thing. And then climate change and resiliency, as I mentioned, is a key thing. Looking at a 30-year plan, that's included in the costing, that it can't be short-term decisions. It needs to be, if this is operating in 30 years, let's look at what the cost of that resilient piece needs to be to ensure that we have a 30 and 50-year time frame. Jerry, that's generally a conclusion.
I own stock in ClickShare. So actually what happened is our wireless here, for some reason, to use the technical term, crapped out. So sorry about that, but I think you covered all the points.
I wanted to go, yeah.
Jose, do we want to do a Q&A now?
Yes, Steve and Damon, thank you very much. Apologize to everyone for the technical glitches, but we'll take some questions right now.
Let me go back here, and you take this side. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Genevieve Clifton, NJTPA. Damon, I love hearing your presentation, and I love the way the Port Authority and the team is really sort of forward-thinking and the way they're approaching it. And the one thing that rattles with me from the presentation you mentioned a couple of weeks ago is the fellow who does the presentation on technology and how that's going to impact how we're operating in the future. And I have feet in NJDOT on both sides, the road side, the freight side, and the maritime side, all three really. And I still hear him saying in his presentation, 10 years from now, there's not going to be any more toll booths. Stop thinking about it. And that thought process and what he was speaking about just really stuck in my mind. And when I'm with our road transportation planners and the way they're thinking about transportation has not, in my opinion, caught up with sort of the forward-thinking approach that I see my team doing on freight delivery and analysis and where we're going from here, that I see Anne talking about, that I see you folks talking about. So one of the things I'd like to see as a group of transportation planners coming out of all of this is that we do a presentation, or we take this forward to the design community, particularly the highway and road design community, to make sure we're bringing this forward together. Otherwise, I'm seeing this disconnect in my mind that I can't sort of quite wrap my thoughts around. So it's just something that I wanted to put on the table to make sure that what's coming out of the DOT freight plan, the Port Master Plan, NIPTC plan, TPA plan, everybody's plan is translating now back down to the roadside thing.
Genevieve, yeah, great comment, and that gentleman's comment in our working session was great. It was like, yeah, toll booths, why do they need to look like you'll still pay tolls? But do they need to be this big and congested? And that's a good thought. So from our perspective and the way we're thinking of it, we're doing our sort of 30-year layouts and thinkings in terms of acreage needs, efficiencies. We're stretching it. We're doing that to sort of what world best practice should be. But recognizing there's short-term implementation challenges, there's constraints to that. And so we've sort of got a 30-year view, but then in our 1 to 10-year plan is going to be much more mindful of things aren't going to be as efficient as they need to be. But we need to plan that we'll get there, because it would be shame on us if we didn't. But working as a group, I agree with you, to sort of push the boundaries that over 30 years maybe we do get to those efficiencies. So that's how we're thinking of them, and that's where that flexibility in our plan has to be, to say that we hope you get there, but if you don't, we're sort of trying to keep those two balls alive.
So to the other side of the room, Carl. You have somebody right here? Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Mary Patterson, and I'm the chair of Civics United for Railroad Environmental Solutions. And Damon, my question is, in the master plan, is there any talk about expansion of freight rail?
So certainly as part of the master plan, the Port Authority has, I think, a stated goal of trying to increase modal share, doing more freight rail. They've done a lot of investment. I think it's $1 billion of intermodal express rail facilities. And so to answer the question, yes, it's certainly a view to maximize rail as much as possible.
That's in Greenville Yards? Is that in Greenville Yards?
So Greenville Yards, Steve, there's the ICTF.
Right, that handles Port Jersey. It's handled by Greenville Yards. But that's one of 5 express rail facilities. And the other is terminals. Can't hear it. Here's.
I said that Greenville Yard will have new express rail to handle Port Jersey, and that there are other express rail facilities at the other terminals.
This side of the room, anyone? In the back, Bill? In the way back.
Way back, yeah.
In the comfy chairs.
Okay. Bill Gallagher, Executive Director, Mr. Hudson Rail Freight Task Force. Can you hear me okay?
No, is it on?
It's on. A little bit closer now, is that better? I know? Yeah. Okay. I was thinking about the rail issue when the woman brought that up. I can't remember your name. But I'm wondering, in the study, in the analysis, you look at rail not so much in terms of Conrail, CSX, NS, but look at the capacity, the track capacity, and how that could be restructured, reinstitutionalized in some way to increase the use of rail or the capacity. It seems to me, in my experience over the years, that a good deal of the constraint was created by institutional or corporate barriers rather than the lack of actual track or infrastructure, and particularly with the advance and new control systems that may be increased opportunity. For example, a large amount of money will be spent over the next generation on the construction and development of a new Hudson tunnel. And everyone thinks of that as a passenger tunnel, but that tunnel is empty at night. And it's a very large tunnel. It does have the internal diameter to handle double-stack trains, even with the wires. Not all the tracks in Penn Station have constraints. Track 1 on the south side of the station is not in the station, it's outside the station. And a line could be built forward, east into Long Island. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that in your plan, where distribution of the freight or the containers, that some thought needs to be given to the capacity in a more abstract perspective. What could you do with that if it were reorganized? Conrail is another example. Why can't Conrail play a bigger role in internal movement of freight in the region? Not just be the delivery and pickup carrier, for 2 mega carriers.
So there's a few things there, but I think something else that answers the master plan question, things like Conrail, can they change operating these sort of governance issues, and that's where maybe the statement of advocacy of this group, I think there's regional-wide issues and opportunities that really need the support of everyone, and our master plan will go as far as we can for that. In terms of some really good comments there about the capacity and how you view capacity, we've spoken to the Class 1s, and certainly the sense that we got was, once you get out of the region, there's capacity there. It's more, I think, the business drives it. They're private entities, and if there's more cargo and more opportunity, they will come. And so I think that's part of our work in the plan, is to really work how we can, liven up the intermodal investment that the Port Authority has done, such that capacity that's there does get utilised through putting on more service and enticing the Class 1s to come.
Thanks. So before we open up the phone for questions, any last questions in the room? Yep. You can't ask your question.
I thank Dan Peterson again. A number of these phenomena are nonlinear. Climate change is accelerating, as something I spoke before. Consumer demand and the desire of our larger public, again, is a trend that's not linear, but it's actually slowing up significantly. Population changes as well. One of the problems with nonlinear events or trends, I say, is that eventually they come to a crashing point. And is there any thought as to how we actually sustain, should we find ourselves in a big hiccup, so to speak, or is there a lot of thought going into essentially how do we manage this code, nonlinear? At the time as vehicles coming in, changes in labor markets, and again, acceleration of goods mobility.
So, to the extent you can predict it, that's where this flexibility comes back. So I think I've got to keep coming back to our piece of flexibility, is in we fully appreciate it, and yet the gross exaggeration the gross summary of the volumes there certainly looks like it's not taking much mind of some of those issues. It is sort of an envelope of various scenarios that we've got, but it really comes to us sort of flexibility in terms of charting a path with many options and helping articulate the board on how they make decisions when some of the more meaningful and disruptive events may or may not happen, and how they can deal with that, providing them the decision tools for that.
Yeah, John Henry, a freelance reporter. Could you specifically address Mr. Galligan's proposal to use the proposed Hudson River Tunnel for freight in off-peak hours?
So I'm actually, maybe talk to you offline, perhaps with Steve, but I don't know that it's placed in our master plan. We are looking at regional issues. We're dealing with New York EDC. We're dealing with other freight agencies to look at those issues. But specifically to this question, I don't actually have a specific comment other than to say we are working to collaboratively address and make freight movement as streamlined as possible.
The master plan suggests we're abstract with the Northeast Corridor. Thanks, sir. In the master plan for the Northeast Corridor that was basically came out about 3 years ago, there was not just the Trans-Hudson Tunnel, but also an additional tunnel on 2 tracks on the East River, so that it would be a total of 6 tracks to the east to Long Island, and 4, of course, in and out of New York eventually. Then the long-term eventually.
Mark, you get the last one.
Thank you. Mark Nielsen with MPOs in Connecticut. I guess the question I have, the master plan you're working on is more a sort of a facilities master plan for the port area, correct? And I guess as part of your projections, and you're looking at growth and the amount of freight that's going to come into and out of the port. Connecticut is in a position where we receive a lot of that movement. The port of York-New Jersey is a big conduit for a lot of freight that either leaves the state or comes in or actually passes through. So my concern is, and again, the problem with Connecticut is like 95% of the movement is by truck. So as freight increases into the port, that's just going to increase trucks into my state. So I guess the question is, have you or will you be thinking about, what happens to that freight once it leaves, your facility and then gets onto, the road networks that service your port area, but then once they leave, let's say York, what happens to it? We got a lot of issues, and the state just completed their freight plan, and I haven't looked at it entirely, but I'm not sure if they've sort of taken into account, some of the growth that you may be, projecting.
Yeah, so absolutely in terms of the impact, and sort of made reference to that when we showed the capacity slide, being very mindful that the future of distribution centers and how goods then move from there, either via road to other regions, is sort of signaled by where the capacity in the future is. And so very mindful of that, and working with that we had this session 2 weeks ago, which was sort of a great start to working with the regional MPOs on some of these issues, on how can this flow better? You know, help us sort of solve the problem so that it doesn't just hit the road and then drive to Connecticut. And that was a road to our session. You know, we are actively looking to collaborate with the key agencies that will help solve that problem.
And Matt can help with that, actually. So we have opened up the phone. So are there any questions from anyone on the phone for our presenters? Yeah. Going once?
Yeah, right. I know about that.
That's not a question. Okay. Close the phone, please. Great. So, Jose, and thank you to the presenters, and back to you, Jose.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Jerry and Damon and Steve. Thank you very much again. So our next and last item is a roundtable update of freight planning activities, and hopefully we still have the State Department of Transportation, Mark is going to provide I know we'll be more updates.
Yeah, we invited the Connecticut DOT freight planning group. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it today, and I just wanted to provide a quick little update on where they are in their freight planning efforts. Their plan was completed in draft form and was made public in August of 2017. And it's a fairly comprehensive plan. It looks at all the various modes that freight is moved on. Similar to the Port of New York and New Jersey's planning effort, they had an extensive outreach effort. They conducted a series of workshops where they invited a lot of freight stakeholders. They did some outreach directly with shippers in terms of interviews and surveys of truck drivers to try to get a really good idea of what some of the issues are and what are some of the problems that transporters are facing in through Connecticut. Again, as I sort of mentioned in my question, Connecticut does have an airport, it does have freight rail, but everything, and we do have 3 deep-water ports, but almost all of it moves by truck. There's a lot of issues with expanding the movement onto these other modes. Freight rail is a problem in Connecticut because of the main lines that we can use are primarily passenger lines, and so there's a lot of competition with passenger service, and passenger service has that priority. So you could get more freight out of into Connecticut via Haven line, but one conduit doesn't have that access to it. A lot of the other freight lines throughout Connecticut are small, short-haul routes that are kind of in deteriorating condition. So there's a lot of issues there. So the state is looking at how to, improve and enhance that infrastructure. But yeah, the main recommendations from the plan are to focus in on upgrading and improving the freight, primary freight network and through the state, which is primarily the interstate system, I-84, I-95. I know Jerry had shown a couple of big projects that the state is looking at that are really freight related. Construction, replacement of the I-84 Route 8 interchange in Waterbury, replacement of the Hartford Viaduct on 84, and some improvements in widening on I-95 between New York and Haven. Those are sort of the real key freight bottlenecks, especially mega regionally, I should say. And so they're also looking at several projects that would help improve some of the other expressways throughout the state where they've identified freight bottlenecks. So that's sort of the quick overview of the state plan. And again, just echoing what Matt Form is trying to do, I think we have to coordinate these plans. The Connecticut plan can't be done in a vacuum without considering what is happening in New York and New Jersey. And I think NIMTC and Jerry especially is taking that lead and trying to bring us all together. So it's been a good process, and I hope it does continue.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Mark.
David Rosenberg is on the phone, so he can report on New York State's plan. If he's still on the phone.
I am on the phone. I am on the phone.
State plan.
Sorry.
Yes.
Jerry, I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, David.
Awesome. Okay, David Rosenberg, New York State DOT. I'll provide an update on the New York State Freight Plan. All of our information is available on our New York State Freight Plan website to date. You can do what the young kids do and just Google New York State Freight Plan, and it'll pull right up. And I wanted to highlight, especially in this forum, that we did develop a freight web atlas, and we have a bunch of data on that atlas. So if you are a surrounding state, an MPO in a surrounding state, an MPO within the state, you can go on there and you can take a look at the data. It shows volume, tonnage, and you can look at it by quarter, and this will start to show you the supply chain. You know, 84 eastbound is the majority of tonnage, or more tonnage goes eastbound, the gateway to New England. So we talked about freight data earlier. This is a tool that we've developed for other states to take a look at. It is TransSearch. Some people like TransSearch, some people do not, but you can still compare it with your data, because as Ann said, 50 states are doing 50 state freight plans, and it would be good if we saw the data and some of the analysis coming out of these plans, and this is just a user-friendly, GIS-based tool. Shows ports, airports, intermodal facilities, and if you pull them up, if you go to the point, it'll list, you know, what it is. So it'll tell you what it is. We have multiple ports, airports that do freight. We have international border crossings. We're a bridge state. We do a lot of pass-through freight. About 2/3 of our freight goes through the state. So the Web Atlas is a tool for other states, MPOs and such. And just a brief update also, we did extensive outreach, did private sector interviews. It's a multimodal plan. We are looking to have a draft plan in the spring of 2018 and a FAST Act compliant plan. FHWA will need 90 days for review, so probably late spring or summer of 2018. So on the website is if you have questions, you can certainly type in a question, and all the materials are there. And that's the update on the New York State Freight Plan.
Thank you, David. And New Jersey DOT, your update, please.
Sure. I didn't cover an update, but as you know me, I'm always happy to talk. Steve Shiramonte, actually sitting in front of me on our WSP team, is actually the technical lead for our freight plan, but he claims that his voice is not working. I don't know what that's all about, but he's going to give you a few words, and then I'm going to follow up behind him.
So this will probably have to be disinfected when I'm done. My children have been inflicting me with some sort of plague last week, but we did deliver a draft freight plan to FHWA yesterday, is it, or Monday. It was about a 14-month study. We did the same types of things that you've heard from Connecticut and New York, lots of data analysis, heavily inclusive freight advisory committee that some folks in this room were participants in. You know, I think it ended up being a pretty solid story of what's going on in New Jersey. Lots of projects that are currently being done, but also another couple hundred projects, I think, that we identified that still need to be done. So there's a significant investment that needs to be made, and we're looking forward to seeing some of it implemented going forward.
Yeah, and two big things that are in there that I think are relevant to what we're talking about today. The one is one I brought up when Damon was speaking before, which is how we, at least in DOT, I don't know how the other DOTs are necessarily structured, but we in DOT aren't as integrated with the roadside folks as we should be with our capital program management folks in terms of how projects come through the DOT pipeline and sort of pop funded out the other side, and what components go into prioritizing those projects. So our plan speaks to better ways for our freight unit and Andrew and Himanshu and the folks who work on freight to get involved in the CPM process, make sure that we're making better decisions about those discrete freight aspects of what might be typical land-side projects that we're trying to do. So that's something, and like I said, from when the Port Authority was speaking a couple weeks ago, something I've really been focused on, how we can make sure that these things translate and push forward together, because in New Jersey it's somewhat bifurcated. So our plan really recommends that we do a better job of looking comprehensively at those big ticket improvements that we're trying to make. Just, you know, give me that eye if I say anything out of line. But that's something that I think is important internal to the state of New Jersey. And then the other, again, stems from a Damon slide where you sort of see, you know, freight coming up as this large triangle heading off into space and capacity kind of flatlining roughly through the middle. I think one of the things we need to do on the state side, again, speaking for New Jersey, is show that and do a better job of advocating. The thing that is going to solve that disconnect isn't more road improvements. Not that we don't need to maintain what we have, but the thing that's going to solve that challenge are freight improvements and capacity improvements and making sure that our DOT, our Department of Transportation, understands why those types of projects and freight improvement projects are really going to be a betterment for the system as a whole. So those are two things that I think are special and wonderful about our report, in addition to Andrew Himanshu and the WSP team that put it together.
Thanks very much. The federal agencies, the Federal Highway Administration, are you still on? No, I guess not.
What's the merit?
Other MPOs?
Well, actually, I'd like to take a shot at something. You'll let me know if I'm overthinking, but we have proposed, NYMTC has proposed a clean freight corridors planning study for its next work program that would begin April 1st, 2018. So right now that's being considered by our members, and we're seeing if we can fit it financially. But certainly we would be using the map form to optimize that work, because clean freight corridors make most sense if it's done at the broader scale. So that's something that NYMTC is doing going forward.
Thanks, Jerry. I think Ann also wants to add a few things.
Just a few other items. First of all, tomorrow night there's an open house on our Plan 2045. You can get more information on the NJTPA website, which is the federally mandated long-range regional plan that all the MPOs are doing. You can look at the draft online. I think the comment period may be drawing to a close, but you have an opportunity to look at it. And again, the open house is tomorrow night. The other two items I just want to mention quickly that I didn't bring up before, we are developing shorter title forthcoming, a truck traffic management best practice handbook, which is a compendium of best practices that we'll be giving to our counties and subregions and communities so they can think through how to best manage freight movement in their area. Everything from curbside management to signage, off-peak delivery, and so forth. And finally, again, we do have our next Freight Initiatives Committee meeting on December 11th that will be focusing on emerging technologies.
Thank you, Ann. And anyone else will want to provide any input, any updates?
Go.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that next month a federal program is going into effect that could be a possible disruptor, and that's the electronic logging devices that could have an impact on the availability of truckers. It's been long in the works, and the 18th is the when it kicks in.
So, Jerry, I'll kick it back to you for discussion of future working group activities.
Yes, and we'll do this quickly because I'm the only thing sitting between you and lunch, I understand. So I do want to do one thing, Jose, is to acknowledge, I'm sorry. Well, we kind of did that, but do you want to add something? Yeah. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Peters. I work at New York City Department of Transportation for the Office of Freight Mobility. I'd just like to announce that, echoing what the other state agencies have mentioned and other MPOs, we are also leading a statewide effort for developing a statewide freight plan. We are focusing very narrowly on last mile issues, but it's a very complex issue within the New York City region. We've also been engaging with a lot of multiple stakeholders from the industry as well as other city agencies. And our plan is scheduled to be completed in September of 2018. Just a couple of highlights. We'll be working on seeing how we can do a lot more alternative strategies, whether it be looking at cargo bikes as a potential option. There are some barriers there, but we're looking at that as well, and also looking for other sustainable fleet strategies as well. We'll be doing a second round of outreach in 2018 to the community to really talk through what Sandra mentioned about the impact of our decisions and, you know, how we can reduce the freight footprint, essentially, for our individual road users. We are also working to expand our delivery program to ramp up to target over 900 businesses within an upcoming year. So that would really help to reduce congestion during the peak periods, where we'll be working with receivers and transporters to help to shift some of those deliveries to our partners. We've also convened a bridge strike multi-agency task force to work to reduce the prevalence of bridge strikes, particularly on parkways where trucks are prohibited, and working to also develop an education program for that. We are also working on updating our truck route network. One of the key things that we'll be working on doing is to provide access for sealed containers that are traveling from New Jersey to the Holland Hook Global Container Terminal. We'll be working with, we have been working with EPC and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to provide that access. That would no longer prohibit trucks over 80,000 pounds and 73.5 feet to access just a small segment between the Gospels Bridge and the Holland Hook Terminal. So we're doing a lot of updates and changes. Some of them will be rule changes in the upcoming years in terms of updating our truck route network to be responsive to the land use changes and all the changes and disruptions that Ann talked about as well. We're seeing that on a day-to-day basis on the ground level in New York City, and it's definitely a challenge for us. And thank you for having me.
So Denise, thank you very much for your update. I think Denise really touched on some of the questions that were raised earlier about what are we doing about congestion, what are we doing about security. So thank you very much.
And New York City's freight planning is very, very important to what's happening in an intake part of the region, as well as the region as a whole. So we have a number of different levels of nested plans here. We have state plans and MPO plans, and then local plans from areas like New York City, and they all have to work together. So that's one of the issues of coordination. So I apologize for not calling you up earlier. I was in the middle of acknowledging Howie Mann, actually. Where was Howie? He left. Well, then he's not going to get acknowledged. But anyway, Howie is the freight planner emeritus from NYMTC, and spent a long, long time in his career pulling together different parts of this freight planning process. So I just wanted to acknowledge him because it's great to see that in his retirement.
Yeah, there he is.
Hey.
He thought he was on still awake.
You probably pulled him out of the bedroom or something.
Good about it?
Yes. Oh, it was amazing, Howie. So I'm not going to repeat it. So, you know, Howie did a lot of work pulling together elements of this freight planning process for NYMTC, and needs to be acknowledged for that. So thank you for being here, Howie. I see you're enjoying your retirement by coming to freight meetings. So just moving forward, in the last couple of minutes here, I will take on organizing the charge to the group based on what the input that you gave today. And I think that, you know, moving forward into other activities at this level, at the level of a multi-state freight working group, if there's further input indicated into the port master plan, we can certainly schedule to provide that, although you're doing very extensive outreach regardless and don't necessarily need a map form to do that, but if you'd like to do that, Steve, we'll certainly make that available as you move forward into solutions. Also, resilience came up today, and Federal Highway Administration just concluded a 3-state resilience study with the input of 4 MPOs and 3 state DOTs, and that would be a topic, I think, that would be good for this group, because freight resilience is very much related to overall resilience of the transportation system. So that may be something we look into. The question becomes, when do we next pull the group together? Jose, what I'm going to suggest is sometime during the first quarter of 2018, because there are other activities going on, and we don't want to make this too frequent, but we don't want to take too much time either. And maybe after the snow flies or something, we can get this group together again and look at some of these topics. But some of it is also related to your schedule, Steve, and the Port Master Plan, so we'll talk about that. There are other topics we can certainly cover, but we do want to strategically select the topics that make the most sense at the multi-state level. So these are just some that jump out from today's discussion.
Jerry, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you on the phone, on what remains, and those of you here, thank you very much for your participation. Look forward to seeing you again at our next meeting.
Sorry.